In last week's video, we explored the North Rim Drive of Black Canyon of the Gunnison National Park, and in today's video, we're going to explore the South Rim Drive. This side of the park is way more established with paved roads and a visitor center, and it's also the much more popular side of the park to visit. In this video, we will be hitting almost every viewpoint, and we'll be starting off at Tomichi Point. If this is your first time visiting the park, this spot is really cool because this is where you're going to get your first look at Black Canyon of the Gunnison. You don't have to walk very far at all to enjoy the views here, but if you feel like putting some distance in, there is the Rim Rock Nature Trail. It's 1.7 miles long. But the good thing is that if you're not much of a hiker or if you have mobility issues, you can get views pretty similar to this straight from the parking lot. This stop shouldn't take you too long, probably about 5 to 10 minutes. It took us just a little bit longer because it was our first view of the canyon, so of course we took 10,000 pictures of it. But soon we were back in the car and heading towards stop number 2 on this list. Located about 0.2 of a mile down the road is the Visitor Center and Gunnison Point. Located here, you will find a very large parking area, which is a good thing, because this spot is home to one of the best views in the park, and we'll get to that in just a second, but first, we're going to stop by the Visitor Center. Not only can you stock up on some Black Canyon of the Gunnison swag here, but they also have a lot of information about how the canyons were formed. If you have some time over the course of your visit, we would highly recommend stopping by here because it was really interesting. And they even have a miniature replica of the entire canyon here, which is definitely worth checking out. Located almost directly behind the visitor center is that best view in the park that I was talking about, and it's known as Gunnison Point. To get to the viewpoint, you will be taking a trail that's about 100 yards long and has some stairs on it. You can expect to spend about 10 to 15 minutes here. That is, unless you're into landscape photography, then it might be a little bit more. Something that's really interesting about the landscape here is that it is a miracle that any plants are able to grow. The annual rainfall here averages out to only 2.73 inches, so these are definitely some drought-tolerant plants. The view from this spot is much more immersive than the one you get from Tomichi Point. Not only will you get a good look at the Gunnison River, but you're going to have picturesque canyon views on both your left and right side. We weren't looking to do a whole lot of hiking in Black Canyon of the Gunnison because we were saving our energy for the Gold Mountain via Ferrata, which you can see in the upper corner. But there is another hiking trail here known as the Oak Flat Loop. It's about 2 miles long. After saying a quick hello to this adorable little bunny, we were on our way to the third stop, which is the Pulpit Rock Overlook. You will be driving about 1.7 miles down the road until you see this medium-sized dirt parking lot on the right side. This lot could fill up on busier days. If you're like us and enjoy getting some learning in on your trips, they do have a geology talk here daily at 11 a.m. But even if you don't, it is well worth taking the 134-yard walk out to the viewpoint of Pulpit Rock. And if you brought lunch, there are also picnic tables along the way. It was really neat seeing the third deepest canyon in the entire country from so many unique angles. If you have time over the course of your visit, we recommend taking the long drive around to see it from the north side as well. You can see our video about that by clicking in the upper corner right now. Not only is this canyon deep, but it's one of the narrowest canyons in the United States as well. It has an average width of 1,100 feet, but at its narrowest point, it's only 40 feet wide. To put that in perspective, the Grand Canyon is 16 miles wide in certain spots. Another interesting fact about how this canyon was carved out is that it was cut by one of the fastest moving rivers in the country. The Gunnison River descends at an average of 43 feet per mile, making the river itself 6 times steeper than the Colorado River that carved out the Grand Canyon. You'll probably be spending about 10 to 15 minutes at the stop before heading just 0.6 of a mile up the road to our next stop, which is Cross Fissures. The trail to get to this viewpoint is 357 yards long, so it is quite a bit longer than some of the other ones, but as you'll see in just a second, it is pretty cool. Even though this is quite a spectacular spot to visit, mankind has not always held it in such high regard. There is evidence that the first human presence here was over 10,000 years ago. Way back then, this area was inhabited by the Ute tribe. They didn't get to take advantage of all the roads and amenities that we have today, and the tall canyon walls made this area a little bit less than hospitable to them. They refer to the canyon and the Gunnison River below as much rocks, big water. Sounds about right. This area will take you a little bit longer if you want to explore all of the various lookouts. You really need to look around if you want to find all these viewpoints because there are some that are kind of tucked away, like this one right here. I'm quite confident that we found all of the lookouts, and soon we are on our way back to the car and on to our next destination. With a distance of 1/10 of a mile, this is one of the shortest drives that you'll have between viewpoints. And here we are arriving at Rock Point. As you saw on the sign, we will be hiking about 294 yards out to the overlook. Since it is so close to Cross Fissures, the view will be somewhat similar, but we feel like the approach to the viewpoint on this one is quite a bit more spectacular as you hike amongst large boulders. After climbing these rocky stairs, if you head off towards the right, there is another photo op for landscape photographers. It's this twisted old tree. I'm not exactly sure why, but things like this are always interesting to photograph. This spot also has a fairly unique lookout that might make people with a fear of heights kind of creeped out. There are handrails, which is always a good thing, but it is this little tiny platform perched high up on the cliff. There are no handrails on the left side as you approach it, so watch your step, but these are some of the views that you get from up here. We are now officially past the halfway point on the list of viewpoints that we visited on the south rim. Due to daylight hours and weather, we did have to skip 2 of the stops along the way, and the first one that we skipped was the Devil's Lookout. We did, however, end up driving a little bit over a mile to Chasm View. This is a short 100-yard walk that will take you out to where you can see the canyon at its narrowest point. And this is also a popular spot for rock climbers, so look down, you might just see some people scaling these massive walls. This should be a fairly short stop, and the next spot on our list is just around the corner from it. After driving a short 1/10 of a mile, you will be arriving at one of the must-stop spots in our opinion, and that is Painted Wall. Here you will find a 200-yard mini hike that takes you to the tallest cliff in Colorado. Here, geology fans will be thrilled to see a massive rocky face covered in light-colored bands called pegmatite. These were created over 1 billion years ago when molten rock squeezed between fissures in the rock, forming these bands. This is one of those spots that's hard to do justice with the cameras, but just in case you need a reference for the size of this rocky face, here it is compared to the Burj Khalifa on the right. This is another spot that's said to take between 10 to 15 minutes to visit, but it took us a whole lot more. But eventually we once again headed back to the car. We drove about 7/10 of a mile, skipping Cedar Point, and headed to Dragon Point. The trail to this viewpoint is only 100 yards long, and supposedly the views are very similar to Cedar Point, so you might be able to get away with just stopping at one or the other. However, from our research, it seems like Dragon Point is the more popular option. The canyon is quite a bit wider at this point, but from here you will get spectacular views of the river as it winds its way through. We only have 2 stops left in this video. The next one is 0.6 of a mile away, and it's known as Sunset View. This is another great stop if you have anyone in your group that has mobility issues, because you can get great views directly from the parking lot. The views here may not be as spectacular as some of the spots that we visited earlier in the video, but this is supposedly a great spot to take in a sunset. Unfortunately, when we were visiting, it was pretty cloudy, so we didn't get much of one. There are also some picnic tables here, so this is another great option if you want to stop for lunch. But if not, you can probably wrap this spot up in about 5 to 10 minutes. After a fairly short stop and taking in just a couple more views, we made our way towards the last stop along the road. It is about 3/4 of a mile away, and it's called High Point. This is where you will find the Warner Point Trail. We weren't able to do the entire trail this day, but it is 1.5 miles long, and even though you don't get views of the canyon anymore, you will be looking out over Montrose and the Uncompahgre Valley. The views that we did get were pretty nice, and I wouldn't mind trying this one on our next visit. And that is going to do it for our video about the South Rim Drive at Black Canyon of the Gunnison National Park. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe because that really helps out the channel. Let us know where you'd like to see us go in the comments below. And for all the information about Black Canyon of the Gunnison National Park as well as other awesome adventures, head on over to 𝐷𝐿𝑖𝑣�thatadventure.com.